Welcome to Truth Quest. If you are striving to balance earthly challenges with a heavenly perspective in areas like business, family, relationships, money, and personal growth, you have found your community. Welcome back to Truth Quest. So, I have a new friend. Surprise! I didn't have to pay her or anything. This is my new friend, Joy. We met through a mastermind recently, and it was just sisters from another mister, right? We just knew. So, let me introduce you to Joy. She is a passionate financial educator with WealthWave, a certified financial educator with Heartland Institute of Financial Education. She grew up in a Christian home, committed her life to Christ at a young age. She's witnessed God's faithful provision throughout her personal trials, including a really challenging health journey in 2023. Currently, she's learning to trust God's timing in her professional and personal relationships. And while navigating her role in the financial industry, which we all know that's not any good place to navigate, she strives to maintain a focus on truth and discernment, recognizing that the importance of being grounded in Scripture is all there. So, welcome, Joy. Thanks for hanging out with me for a little bit today. I
Thanks so much for
appreciate you.
having me.
You bet. So, can you share a little bit about your faith journey and how it's shaped your approach to the challenges that you have faced?
Sure. Sort of the typical grew up in a Christian home, asked Jesus into my heart when I was a little kid. But then when I was 16 was when the reality of what Christ had done personally in terms of dying for my sins, that it wasn't just like Jesus died for the world, but that he died for me specifically, became more real to me. And that was sort of the point where I would say my faith wasn't just a product of my parents, but something that I personally took responsibility for and cultivating in my life. And that has, of course, growing up in a Christian home, I had that worldview, and that truth and reality were something that God had created, and we knew where truth came from in the Bible. But when it comes to the rest of my life, there's this great quote from C.S. Lewis. It goes, "I believe in Christianity as I believe that the sun has risen, not only because I see it, but because by it I see everything else." And that's really how, you can't escape from how everything is based on that foundation of truth, and how God set things up.
I love that quote. Yeah. I like C.S. Lewis anyway.
He's got his way with
So, okay, you're in the financial industry, which is, like I said earlier, it's a tough industry.
Yes.
And how do you approach stewarding resources? I mean, not just the money, right? So we're talking time, talents, and treasure,
Sure.
from a biblical perspective. And what misconceptions do you think people often have about these areas?
Oh, yes. Well, first off, there are so many good parables in the Bible that give us what a picture of stewardship is. God gives us things, but they don't belong to us. They're still his. And so it's up to us to utilize them, not as if they're ours to do with what we want, but we are taking care of them while we have them entrusted to us. And, he's the one who gives things to me. He can take them away. Sometimes he can call me to give to someone else. And
Right.
so it's, that's it. Sort of a guiding principle is that, people matter more than things. And, there's just practical ways that lays itself out. If a chair gets scratched when kids are playing or something like that, it's no big deal. Like
It's
holding
a
things
chair,
loosely,
right?
and they're having a great time in building relationships. And so that's really what's more important. But when it comes to misconceptions, especially in Christian circles, but bleeds over a lot into the financial industry as well, is this idea that sort of if you just believe hard enough, God is obligated to bless you with health, wealth, resources, whatever. But that's the prosperity gospel, and it is such a harmful idea. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
you just
Amen.
see how it creates this pressure on people. If they're struggling, then it must be because their faith isn't strong enough, or they've done
Uh-huh.
something wrong, or they have some hidden sin in their life. But that's not what scripture teaches. Yes, we are responsible for how we manage the things that God gives us. We should make wise decisions, but it's also clear that we will have trouble. You can't escape it. In fact, God uses those trials to refine our character and make us more like Christ. And so it's not like, when it comes to stewardship, it's not just like chasing these blessings or something like that, but faithfully managing what I've been given
Uh-huh.
with like open hands and keeping an eye on eternity.
Yeah. I know we tend to want to close those hands though, right? Let me just hold on to it. I just need to hold on to it a little bit longer.
We have those favorite things that are harder to give up.
Yes. Amen. So, all right. Well, all right. Share with us a time when your faith, though, was severely tested. I mean, what did you learn about God's faithfulness in that
Uh,
experience?
I feel like most of the examples of God's faithfulness have come through um, meeting my needs in different ways, and sometimes it's like very practical ways. Um, you know, you're struggling with not making enough money and having bills to pay and stuff like that, and an opportunity to help someone with a yard project or something comes up, and
Right.
so you're able to get through the end of it. But I say like the biggest example would be um, in 2023. You referenced like that major medical ordeal that I went through that ended in
Right.
back surgery, and it was the it came on so gradually, I would say, and that I think is even part of God's faithfulness. It started, I thought it was like a simple back strain. Maybe I'd like tweaked something when I lifted something wrong. But over several months, it got worse to the point that I eventually ended up not being able to walk. And the process of getting diagnosed, scheduled for like an MRI, x-rays, going through physical therapy, having to wait for like results and referrals and things, it dragged out over the majority of 2023. And um, I just felt like every day my pain was increasing. I was losing function every week, but that was on the personal side of things. On the professional side of things, I sort of felt like I was going through the same thing with my business actually that same year. You know, I had some promising opportunities to teach financial literacy classes, particularly in a large company that came to town here,
Oh,
and
wow.
but nothing gained traction. It was so confusing. I was like, "What am I doing wrong here?" Um,
Mm-hmm.
I just kept I just felt like doors kept getting closed or people would ghost me. And looking back now, I can actually see that God was pumping the brakes on my business. If
Right.
I'd taken on these new classes or like a ton of clients during that season, I wouldn't have been able to follow through. I probably would
Mm.
have had to cancel most of it actually. But, eventually, at the end of September, my condition got so bad that I actually had to like call an ambulance and get a ride into the hospital in Salem, because I could not get out of bed on my own.
Oh,
But
how
you know,
debilitating.
at the same time, God was in that too. My ambulance crew was a father and son, and the dad was a pastor at a local church. Like,
Oh,
so you've got
man.
people who come to pick you up from the hospital to go to the hospital, like, and they actually had to hang out with me for probably half an hour or so because they didn't have a bed ready available. And it was such a blessing to have someone who shared my worldview, who had the same like framework for truth, who could be encouraging when I was in so much pain at the time. Um, and it was just little pieces like that where God was bringing people in along the way the entire time. But eventually, um, I was admitted to the hospital later on that day, and then my surgery was scheduled for later that week, which was such a godsend. But there was another element that had been going on in the background that God's timing just was amazing in this. I'd known I was going to need help soon with how
Right.
quickly I was losing function. So I'd actually asked my mom to come down and help me for a long weekend. And
Oh,
we'd
yeah.
chosen the first weekend in October and booked her train tickets and everything. And this was before I even had been met with the surgeon. And turned out that the day she arrived, the day before I was discharged from the hospital, I couldn't have planned it better if I actually knew when my surgery was going to happen. Like, you know, and so it was just, leaving things in God's hand and trusting his timing. It's never wrong. Like, he is always just comes through like that. And
What I
so,
see that you recognized it, right? How many people though say, "Oh, it was a coincidence," right?
oh,
It's like
mhm.
so much that
It's,
God does. We try to give or take credit away, I guess. And
oh
and
yeah,
I
people
I love that
lucky or
when you
get,
choose to see the provision, you choose to see how he is showing up, you see it. So I love that. Anyway, keep going. Sorry, just I
oh
interrupted
yeah.
you.
Well, I was just gonna say it's moments like that where it's so if you take the time, you can like pause, recognize I wasn't the one who planned this. God orchestrated the entire thing.
Right.
Obviously, the people there, timing, support. I mean, we had church friends who were helping us out. My team with work was able to take on the cases that I did have, and I even had like friends' kids come over and help me because I wasn't allowed to bend, lift, or twist for 6 weeks, and so I can't even pick up a laundry basket on my own, and so she
Mm-hmm.
had a variety of kids that I were available, and so I just wanted them to
Head
show up.
spares.
Oh, she has 8, and so like the youngest 5 were like would rotate through, and be my helper
That's
for
cool.
2 hours Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and that was really helpful. But um, I ended up spending most of that fall and through like winter recovering, and then a year of physical therapy
Oh
to get
man.
back. And but what I really took from that was, number one, God was very merciful to not show me everything that was coming down the pipe.
Mm.
Like, he just gave me what I needed to get through that day, sometimes that hour, sometimes that minute when I was in a lot of pain. And, but he was with me every step of the way. And his timing is very different from ours often, but it's always so much better than we could have orchestrated ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Because he sees the entire picture. And so we can trust him and his wisdom because he sees everything. And so, yeah, I see now that slowdown in my business that I was having, that where he was pumping the brakes, it was protection for me, not failure. He was, making sure that I
Right.
preserve those relationships.
Right. Well, and our perception of failure is not God's perception of failure.
Ah,
We tend to want to say success is I am doing a ton of business, I'm making a ton of money, and that is not his measuring stick,
oh,
right?
not, not,
He's like, how
definitely
many
not.
disciples have you made? Right?
Right.
I have this vision that I'm going to arrive in heaven one day and I'm going to get a hug from Jesus because I'm a hugger and I know he is too. Right? So I'm going to get this big hug and he's going to go, "Hey, who'd you bring with you?"
Not a bad question.
And I don't want to say no one, right? I want to say, "Oh, yeah, I shared you with, I was telling all these people about you." I want to be able to say that. And because that's his test as opposed to our test of success. And it's so hard for me to remember that. Um, I want to jump onto how many clients do I have? What's my bank account look like? Right? It what's my investments look like? And the thing is, those are not bad things to have or to do or to want. It's just not the measuring stick for success. And it's a measuring stick for what God's given us to steward, as you said, right? This is what, here is this, use this to go do. And I love that. I love that. In what ways has your spiritual foundation, right? Because you grew up in the church, but
Mhm.
how has it influenced how you make like personal ministry or business decisions, especially during those difficult times?
This actually touches on another big learning curve for me. So, I changed careers back in 2018. Prior to this, I'd been working for a history professor as his assistant.
Oh
Um,
wow.
but going from like sort of the employee mindset into entrepreneurship was a huge leap. And I really struggled with sort of the daily grind, those daily tasks that you need to be like staying on top of. And I just could not seem to be consistent to save my life. And I was like wondering, I mean, where do people get disciplined? Did I just not like play sports enough as a child? Like, am I depressed? Why is my handle on life falling off? It's so, you know, and, life outside of work was getting a lot more demanding at the time too. We had a lot going on with my in-laws. My husband's parents and grandma were all here in town with us. And in 2020, grandma had fallen and needed to move to assisted living. And then in February of 2021, my father-in-law had this massive stroke, and he didn't have power of attorney or advance directive or anything. It was a huge mess. So we were like doing a Medicaid spend down, racing the clock to cover his costs, like 12 grand a month. But, we made it with a few days to spare. But then later on that same year in December, probably as a result actually of that entire disaster, was where I'm like, my handle on life is falling off. I thought, I was like, I just need to figure this out. What is going on? And I was diagnosed with ADHD in my mid 30s. You're like, things that completely change your perspective on your life up to that point. Suddenly things are making a lot more sense. You're like reviewing your entire life and how things had gone. But, I was still struggling at that time with my business. As you've talked about, it's an extremely demanding industry, and there's a lot of stuff about like declaring your next promotion or income goal, and I just never came close. And of course, there's like all sorts of books that people are always recommending, Think and Grow Rich and other prosperity-minded messages, and I was like, I don't think that's right, but clearly something I'm doing is not working either. So like, what's the answer? But I realized I was actually looking at it backwards. Like, God was bringing clients to me who were walking through similar situations as I had gone through, aging parents, complex financial questions, over these overwhelming transitions that we'd gone through. And because I had lived through it myself recently and met a lot of people who were very helpful, I just didn't know they existed before the process. Right. I could serve my clients so much better and help them get out ahead of some of these crises before they were like, in the midst of it. But, it was so obvious that God was the one who was doing the connecting there, because some of these people, I'm like, I never would have encountered them any other way than like whatever weird thing it was that connected us, or, friend of a friend. But I could not force things to move faster. It was like he would give me like one breadcrumb at a time. When it came to like the next thing I need, I'd be stuck on something like a data entry, for instance, just crushes my soul.
Amen.
Then, I'm at the next conference or something, and I'd be standing in line for lunch next to someone who had just spoken about, how they'd been able to accomplish all this. And I'm like, I know how much paperwork was involved in what they were trying to accomplish. I'm like, how did you deal with all of the paperwork? And they're like, oh, I had an admin from the beginning. And I was like, oh, it's not like you have to wait for a certain income goal to get it out of it. They're like, no, there's like, and actually that was something that even other people on my own team sometimes were telling me, you will know when it's time for an admin when you are earning this much. And I'm like, I don't feel like I can earn that much unless I have someone to help me.
Right.
And that was what this person who I was in the lunch line with said. They're like, no, like if you are not able to do that and it's taking away your time from things that you do well, then absolutely outsource that. It was such a relief. And the timing on that could not have been more perfect too, because at the time my mom was actually wanting to earn a little bit of extra money and she was available. And so she was my first admin and really a huge help in me learning how to have an admin myself. It was really great. But, there's just been other things along the way too, where it's been so obvious that God has been connecting us. There's another team out of Utah who'd actually developed this licensing system for new agents, which was one of my biggest frustrations actually with the financial industry. It's like how it's set up. Everything is in different places. There's no one list for everything. You're basically running a gauntlet and only the strong survive. People who like start the process and actually make it out the other end and make their first $1,000. So, but the team who developed this, it was amazing. We tried it out on our own team, and in 2024, our team doubled, and we only had one person who wasn't able to make it through the whole process. And then we found out that this actually built out a full training system for how to learn how to do this business in the first place. It was like an online course for like how to become an entrepreneur. And they didn't just like provide it to us, they actually invited us to join them in their trainings. And so it was just such a welcoming team. We started making friendships on the team, and it just felt like God was the one who was answering these different problems that I was having as we were going along. But the core thing there is that God is the one who actually owns my business. Like, this is his business. I need to trust his timing, his connections, his plan. And as someone who is totally not driven by income or like awards or recognition, this actually takes a ton of pressure off me. I can
Yes.
focus
Oh, I
on building
agree.
relationships with my clients, and it doesn't have to be like, hitting some sort of like, $100,000 goal or something like that. If I make it on someone's like Christmas list, or better yet, their Christmas caramel sauce list, as one of my clients has, like, I feel like I have been, that is a great reward for me. I know I've done a good job there. And I've been a good steward of that relationship. And so that's actually one thing that I do actually appreciate about our company when it comes to this industry, is that, even when there are recognitions for, someone who was able to achieve some sort of incredible goal or something, it's tied to how many families were served. They translate, someone made $100,000. That means that they helped 50,000 families or something like that. And so I just want to, circling back to actually stewardship, I want to be found trustworthy and faithful with a little bit, and then, give God the credit when he entrusts me with more.
Right. No, that's good. That's good. All right. One last question. What practices help you maintain joy and gratitude during the challenging circumstances, whether they're personal, health wise, or business?
Well, actually, I would say that my previous job is where that was laid. So I mentioned that I work for a professor. He was a history professor at Oregon State, and I'd actually met him through church. But he, not technically like literate at all. So I ended up being sort of like his assistant for life. But I worked for him for 16 years, and for sort of pivotal years too, early 20s through late 30s. And he became sort of a spiritual mentor, almost like a bonus grandparent along the way too. And it was really great timing too, because my parents were out of the country being missionaries for 10 years. And so I had someone who was more readily available than they could be sometimes. But his big life theme was providence. Like, you could not be around him for 5 minutes without him mentioning how providential something was. And that idea that there's no such thing as luck or chance or fortune or whatever, it's not a coincidence. God cares about every single detail of our lives, whether it's small or big. And that mindset has been so key, because, once you start looking for God's hand in everyday moments, it's everywhere.
Right.
A little thing like, you're feeling the gloom of February, but then you see a little green shoot poking through the ground, and like the promise of spring is there. Or coordinating like big things. We had 2 households were being shifted at the same time. When my mother-in-law was moving into independent living, my parents had just come back from Costa Rica and needed to set up house. And so they could basically shop out of her house for everything that they needed for their setup, because she was downsizing to a tiny little apartment. And it could not have been more perfect how the timing worked out there too. But, gratitude is very easy when you can look back and see how many times God has already provided, whatever that might be, financially, the right person at the right time. Like, my husband used to dread whenever we would get like sort of an unexpected check or something. He'd be like, oh my gosh, some sort of disaster is going to befall us because we got extra money now. And I'm like, what are you talking about? God knows that we're like, a major sewer repair is coming down the pipe, and he provided the money for it beforehand. We didn't have to stress about how we were going to pay for it. And so, the other part of that too is I think my name is providential. You know,
Mm-hmm.
Joy doesn't mean happiness. Happiness is too dependent on your circumstances.
Right.
Uh, Joy is that inner peace, that light that you carry with you through a hard season, like
Mm-hmm.
that confidence in God that He is going to be there and work the details out for you. And so, actually, uh, this is not a book of the Bible that I frequently turn to, but sort of stumbled upon it recently. It's Habakkuk 3:17 through 19. This passage is that the writer's saying that even though there's like no fruit, no crops, no animals, yet he's still going to rejoice in the Lord. And that's sort of what I want to live out. Joy
Mm-hmm.
that's not dependent on life going well, but grounded in who God is.
Right. I have stated many times that the way we glorify God when He says no,
Mm.
or when He takes us through hard times, is in our reaction to that no, or that path that we have to walk. And that's our opportunity. At that point, we have the opportunity to glorify God or fail.
Oh,
I've done both.
and it gives people around, like, you don't even have to be someone who's like constantly giving glory to God all the
Oh,
time.
no, no,
But
no.
if you go through, someone sees you in a challenging situation, flat
Mm-hmm.
tire, or, your schedule has been disrupted for some reason and stuff like that, and you just calmly deal with it, and you're not
Mm-hmm.
like bent out of shape. Like, people are like, how do you do that?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, exactly.
you don't
It's in how we do the daily.
right.
I love that. I love that. Oh, and our time is up. So, Joy, thank you again for being here. And for those of you watching, thank you for joining us for another Truth Quest excursion to see how God is positively impacting the lives of His children all over the planet. We hope to see you here again soon. And in the meantime, go out and make disciples. And as you go, be sure to sprinkle a little grace, even if a little is all you've got. Have a great day. As we conclude this episode of Truth Quest, we invite you to be a part of the conversation. Send in your questions, thoughts, and reflections. Don't forget, like, follow, and subscribe to stay updated on our journey together. Until next time, may you continue to seek truth with courage, and remember to sprinkle a little grace, even if that's all you've got.